The opinions expressed in this show belong to the person expressing them. They do not purport to reflect the opinions or views of Rancher or any other entity.
Hey everybody, welcome to today's episode of Sniffles and Cloud Native. I forgot I was unmuted, so if you were watching the Trufflebot intro, you heard me laughing and sniffling and whatever. Hi, my name is Adrian Goins, and I'm delighted to be here with you today. The purpose of this show is to share with you news and interesting content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and to build a community of people who are interested in using technology to live a better life. If you're watching live, consider following or subscribing to the channel, and if you're watching a replay, well, follow and subscribe too, and give the video a thumbs up so the algorithms share it. Join the free community site. Info about that is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. And live chat happens in Discord with a bot that relays between YouTube and Twitch, so come hang out with us either during the show or after, because the live chat is really where most of the action happens. Let's take a moment to say hello to everybody who's joining us today. So I was watching the chat pick up, started out a little slow today, and then it went a little crazy, and I know a lot of you just now rolled in, but hey, so Nuno, Ian, good morning, Wifebot, well, I guess Ian, it's good afternoon. Wifebot, Clint, Sam, Captain Justin, Vito, Tej, watching from YouTube, Mac, watching from YouTube and also in Discord, Cindy, hi, thanks for joining, Chrysalis, Rob, and who else has rolled in here? Wojtek, cześć, yes, it's Monday already. Tim, good morning. Gerald B, hello. Duck, nice to see you. Frank, Smalls, all right, we got a good crowd this morning. And of course, hello to everybody who's watching on YouTube and Twitch that isn't actually in the chat. It's nice to see you all. So let's start off with a little bit of news. Trufflebot and the entire backend got a massive upgrade this weekend. I spent my 4 days holiday weekend working all the way up until 11:30 p.m. last night, and upgraded the backend, so now it's using MySQL database. There's a function for me to add arbitrary URLs, which was broken after the last update, so now when you send me URLs, I can add them. Updated the machine learning model. It's all using SQL Alchemy now, and though you can't yet vote on Tool of the Day, that's there. And this all lays the groundwork for a bunch of planned upgrades that I probably won't have time to do until the next big break, which is going to be at the end of the month. This week also, even though it's not December 1st yet, that's tomorrow, but this week starts a new monthly themes concept. So the theme, the theme for December is policy. That can be network policy, that can be Kubernetes admission controllers with Kyverno or OPA, and because that's the monthly theme, you're going to see questions from me in the community side about it. I'm going to favor content related to policy stuff, and I'm talking to some third party. I'm talking to Jim from Nirmata, and I'm going to reach out to the OPA people and the Cilium people and try and get some additional content from them for the community site. I'll tell you more about that when I actually have some posts up on the community site. But anyway, that's the theme of the month. Policy. Hooray! What do you say? Let's get started. Now here's where hopefully it's gonna work. Trufflebot, I was testing this last night, and maybe? Yay! Okay. So first item, we have an article from my friend Dave Anderson. Dave is the genius behind Metal LB, which I know a lot of you use and like, even though he thinks that it doesn't solve all of the problems that he wishes that it would solve. That's how he and I met and started working together. Well, not working together, but anyway, started talking to one another. He wrote an article that the Collector Bots, actually the Collector Bots did not pick this up. I grabbed this off of Hacker News yesterday using my new add functionality. He was sitting down with Valerie Lancy and talking about, what would we do if we could rebuild Kubernetes from scratch? And he had some ideas, and so he wrote a huge blog article about it. Now, that's not to say that they're doing it, but it does present some interesting ideas about what Kubernetes does well, what it falls short of in its aspirations, or where it falls short in its aspirations, and how he might change those things. So he says, for example, if Kubernetes, what was his analogy here? Kubernetes is the C++ of orchestration software. It's immensely powerful, includes all of the features, looks deceptively simple, and will hurt you repeatedly until you join its priesthood and devote your life to its mysteries. And even then, you're never on firm footing because it's just, there's too many possible ways to do everything. So continuing with that analogy, he said, if Kubernetes is C++, what would Go look like? Aggressively simple, opinionated, grown slowly and warily, and you can learn it in under a week and get on with what you were actually trying to accomplish. That statement alone made me want to go back and learn Go, because all of the work that I did this weekend, I did in Python, because that's my strongest language. I like the idea of something I could learn in a week. Tim Ernich and I were talking this morning about my code quality, and he ran into some bugs because he's using some of my code for a project of his own. And I was like, yeah, I'm a lazy developer. Lazy's not the right word. I don't know what the right word is. But I'm a huge fan of good enough. So if semi-functional code can get me 80% of the way there, it allows me to write a whole lot of functionality in a very short period of time. And that last 20%, so occasionally there's an exception and it, barfs and throws itself out the window, and then I'll go back and fix it. Anything that allows me to do stuff faster, I'm a huge fan of. So what kinds of things would he do? Mutable pods, really interesting idea. Version control everything, also really interesting idea. Replace deployment with pinned deployment. Now, I had not heard of pinned deployment, and you can go and look at this. I actually threw it in the candidates as an upcoming tool of the day. And yeah, so you can go check that out. Also a very good idea. Explicit orchestration workflows. The article continues, and in true Dave Anderson style, it's smart, it's well written, it's just a really good article. So go read that. And I don't really know, okay, IPv6, also a really good idea. Obviously, nobody's going to rewrite Kubernetes, but perhaps over time, some of these things can find their way back into it. Voting and moving on. So now you see an A/B test that Trufflebot didn't actually run that through the model. I added it, so there was no Trufflebot rating. I will get this to where items that are added actually get run through the machine learning model so that they can get a rating from Trufflebot, but not today. Oh, it didn't give me a next. Oh, crap. Oh, no. It was working last night. What happened? Where? Oh, exception. Shit. Oh, did I say that out loud? Okay. So... Oh, it didn't pick up my vote. Huh. Okay, we're going to try this. We're going to try one thing here, because this worked last night. Although I wasn't having community voting last night. That article is going to show up a second time. Vote on it if you want. If that fails again, then we won't have voting today. Sorry, and I'll just go through the items that are in the list. So let's try that again. Okay, so first item is this. Yay, we already talked about it. So let's all give that a vote. Vote, 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 vote. I see the votes coming in. Vote, vote, vote. And exception. Crap. Okay. Sorry, no voting today. Where? So instead, let's do this. Let's load up everything. And we'll just go through it for the show. Sorry. Next up, enforcing policies in Kubernetes. Oh my gosh, it's an article on policy that the collector bots actually picked up last night. Now this came out, let's solo that for a moment. This came out last week, but it's still super relevant. Now it's about OPA. I'm not favoring one software over another. We're going to have it all up there, so don't think that that if it's like Kyverno week, but we're talking about OPA and we're not allowed to do that, we're going to talk about it all because it's all out there. And in fact, there's something that comes up later on that kind of overlaps with what Rancher does, and I had to decide this morning, like, do I want to talk about it? And I decided that I did. Maybe we'll get there. So we've talked about OPA in the past, and not to rehash OPA-ness, the reason that I went ahead and put this on the show is because it's not just about OPA, it actually has a Git repo behind it for examples on how to do things in the article. So it's kind of a getting started with OPA. It explains what it is, it talks about Rego, it talks about Gatekeeper, it talks about admission controllers, and then it goes on to say, okay, so more than just policy, how could we report on this? And then it brings us to Polaris, who we've had on the show before. Polaris can give you a report card for the status of your cluster, and in this case, it can also include policy stuff in there. Neat. So, quick glance, a B+. I know my cluster probably wouldn't get a B+, but by the end of the month, I bet it will. CI/CD stuff, where you can apply this, and then getting into Rego, which I've talked about. The reason that I will favor Kyverno is because I don't have time to learn Rego. That's not any statement against Rego or OPA. And he says that, Rego's not difficult to get into, but does take some getting used to. I'm not really sure what that statement means. It's like, it's not easy, but it's not hard or something. But then he links to a free course that can get you started with it, and then talks about Playground and a REPL environment for Rego and conf test and so on. So going through this article, since this is policy month, will get you started if you want to go down the OPA path. OPA Gatekeeper is baked into Rancher, so if you're using Rancher, it kind of makes sense to use OPA over going with Kyverno, but not necessarily. I use Rancher, I'm going to deploy Kyverno. If we have time, maybe this month, we can deploy each of them and, do an apples to scissors comparison or something. Sorry that there's no voting. Voting will be back tomorrow. So here we have Enforcing Policies in Kubernetes by Murat. Oh, here's the Git repo that he has behind it. It's basically the same article in the README. That's nice. And so some YAML, and then various types of policies to get you up and running. Two to get you up and running. The show periodically features IoT and AIoT stuff. If you don't know what AIoT is, it's IoT with AI. Haha, AIoT. Those are really hard things for the collector bots to grab content for because there's just so much garbage out there that has IoT attached to it, like things that are totally unrelated. But this popped up. Alexa skills development with the Sigma IDE. I didn't know what the Sigma IDE is. First of all, it's not cheap. We'll just start right there. Okay, so there's a free version, single cloud, AWS or GCP. Oh, you know what? This is not the one that's not cheap. It's the other one that's not cheap. This is actually cheap. $7 a month or enterprise pricing if you want to pay a bunch of money. You can get started right away with this and start building serverless applications in an IDE with drag and drop. Now, it only currently supports AWS and GCP. So even in their pricing for the multi-cloud, you can have an AWS or a GCP account. It doesn't work with any other serverless platform, but if you're using Lambda, well, then sweet. This might be a good choice for you. And I like the idea. I mean, this popped up in the bots, even though their linked blogs are actually a little bit old. But it popped up about how you can build an Alexa skill in 5 minutes. I don't have Alexa devices. I don't talk to things. I don't want them relaying stuff out to the cloud. As you might see in a moment, that's really dangerous. However, lots of people do. And lots of people use them, and lots of people like them. And if you can build your own custom Alexa skills to actually do things in your house that are relevant, besides, hey, Alexa, order me some more Amazon stuff, or hey, Alexa, call my wife, or whatever, things that take longer to talk about or that you probably don't want Alexa doing. Yes, I have ordered you 4,000 really expensive camera lenses. You can build your own stuff. So, also, it's the SL App Forge, which is Sigma something, I don't know, or maybe serverless. I'm not sure what SL stands for, But when it showed up in the bot, it looked like Slapforge. And I was like, what an awesome name. It's the Slapforge. It's not. But I thought it was funny anyway. I'm going to go back to the live chat channel over here. Oh, y'all are making fun of me for my Trufflebot crashing. That's cool. That's cool. I don't care. This is a blog by Siam, originally published on Rancher's blog and reposted on the CNCF blog, and it ties into a bunch of other stuff that showed up in that kind of universal unconscious collectiveness stuff. Wifebot wants me to say, hey Alexa. Maybe I could say like, hey Alexa, go like Adrian Goins' YouTube channel. Will it do that for me? The system upgrade controller is a core component of K3OS, but you can, I think, run it in other Kubernetes clusters. I'm pretty sure about that because the stuff that Rancher makes is universal. But this article is about how to automate an upgrade of K3S, and so that's not even dependent on K3OS, but basically you create a plan and it enables you to perform host operating system upgrades from within Kubernetes. This is part of K3OS because of the whole immutable infrastructure idea where you don't log into the host and do anything. You manage the host from Kubernetes, and that's a big part of this. I remember this meetup way back in March where David Blaine Christian? Pretty sure, demonstrated how to do this and how to perform like kernel upgrades and then rolling reboots of the infrastructure. It's a really, really, really sexy piece of tech. If you haven't seen it, I encourage you to watch this. Our meetups are really long, but they're really juicy. Or just go back and work through the blog from Siam and test this out yourself. Easiest, just deploy a K3S cluster on some node somewhere and then go through and upgrade the kernel or whatever. But you can roll this out anywhere, and it's really interesting. And this, since I can do them in any order now, I'll actually jump over to K3OS, which also showed up in the collector bots content this weekend. K3OS is a lightning fast operating system that includes K3S and then is managed from within K3S. It's still under development, but lots of people run it, and it's definitely worth checking out if you haven't looked at it yet. I mean, they're talking boot up K3S, boot up a server with K3S available in under 10 seconds. Bloop, done. Easy configuration via Cloud Init, managing the OS from within Kubernetes, supports multiple architectures, super stripped down so you have a very minimal attack surface, doesn't require a package manager. It's the next generation of Rancher OS. If you've ever seen Rancher OS, you know it as the container operating system. It was Rancher's alternative to CoreOS. But Rancher OS is technically deprecated because it's dependent on Docker. We don't, I mean, at the time, that was all that there was. But now there's Cryo and Containerd and other stuff. Rocket, no. So K3OS moves away from that Docker dependency and then also is in line with Rancher's whole, everything Kubernetes line of products. So check this out too. What do we got? 10 minutes left? Yeah, we'll just keep going through stuff as far as I can get. I think we had Sensu's first article on, either on the show or it was in one of the Espresso Shot tweets that went out later. And points for Nuno. Yeah. Nuno says he's waiting on K0 SOS, which sounds like SOS too. Oh man, nice, good one. So the first one was talking about the APIs for cloud native observability, the things that you can query in Kubernetes for basic level of observability. This continues to talk about some of the more advanced stuff, the pod API, and unfortunately their demo videos are broken. I don't know why. Sensu, if you're watching, fix it. So it first talks about the pod API, which will give you information about pods. And then it talks about the downward API. The downward API is pretty neat. It's a self-referencing API where pods can inherit information about, containers can inherit information about the pod. So you can use them for things like unique identifiers, or for the container to understand a little bit more about the environment in which it's running if it needs that information to make decisions, or to expose information that you can use for observability. The downward API section is much more interesting, in my opinion, than the pod API section. But if you haven't done anything with downward API, this is also a really good introduction into getting started with that. Kubesphere. Kubesphere is the one that I said, this overlaps with Rancher. And I bounced this over to Tim this morning because he and I were talking about some other stuff. And I was like, have you seen this? I haven't seen it before. And I'm surprised. I went back and looked through all the show notes and did a search through the document storage system, and it hasn't shown up. Basically, it's open source. It does things differently than Rancher. It doesn't install Kubernetes. It's not configured for operations. It's targeting developers. And I'm genuinely curious if it's possible to run this alongside Rancher, which it might be. The things that caught my attention on it were that it uses kube federation. So you have to deploy your clusters, but then you can bring them in and federate them for doing multi-cluster app deployments. Okay. And then it includes a UI for deploying stuff with binary to image, source to image, Jenkins pipelines, and some other stuff. It has an app store, an app marketplace, so you can install other stuff. So if you are in the development space and you're looking for, OpenShift competitor type items, like one of the things I really liked about OpenShift is their UI integration with developer tools, like source to image, I think is great. We don't have that in Rancher. I don't know why. I think we should, but we don't. Maybe we will. So I thought this was cool. And what actually popped up was there's a caveat here. So I'll talk about the caveat in a second. What actually popped up was using Kubesphere to manage DigitalOcean Kubernetes and Amazon EKS. So they show how to deploy not how to deploy, but how to import and then start talking to external clusters. So you have a host cluster, and then you have member clusters, and it uses kube federation to do all of the fuzzy magic bits. Caveat: while it looks really nice, the UI is really nice. It's crisp, it's clean. I was a little bit alarmed by, where can I go? Resources, video resources, complete walkthrough to Kubesphere. So we go to this, and then we jump out to YouTube. And I was a little alarmed to see that the Kubesphere community has 58 subscribers. Not a lot of adoption. So perhaps it's totally useless. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear if any of you have deployed this, used it, how you like it, is it good, is it bad, and so on. Bring that information back. Share it with us, share it with me, or share it in the community. And yeah, let's figure it out. Totally random piece of kit here that I almost didn't include until I remembered that I have had stuff on the show related to TinyML on Raspberry Pi for classification of things, which you can do image classification. You feed it a bunch of images, but you could also use it to do real-time classification of things in an environment. Instead of feeding in a motion JPEG stream or an RTSP stream or whatever it is from your webcam or your IP cam and having it determine, is this a dog, is it a person, is it a chupacabra, you could just pop a Raspberry Pi out there and do it, or pop a Raspberry Pi anywhere. And this lens is a 8 megapixel telephoto lens. I don't know how much, what resolution you get on it as far as how telephoto-y it is. It also includes a regular lens, but it includes everything to wire it up to a Raspberry Pi. And it can operate in 1080p 30, 720p 60, and 640 by 480p 90. The 640 by 480, 90 frames a second is good. Like you can that will give you good granularity for items in motion. And that's important if you need to be able to classify what that item is when something's running through the frame. We had an incident when I lived in Brooklyn. There was a shooting up the street from our house, and I had security cameras on the house, and one of them was pointed. I never point at the street, but I point at like my driveway, and it happened to catch a piece of the sidewalk. And the police came by, and they asked if, first of all, they asked if they could just have the footage, and I told them no, because I didn't know what was on it. And they said, if you can tell me what the window is, I will look at the footage, and if there's anything there, I will give you that section. So they explained what had happened, what the time was, and I went back and I looked, and these were FOSCAM IP cams, and it was at night with the infrared, and what it saw was a blur, literally like taking up most of the frame. Totally useless. Something that could shoot in 90 or 120 frames per second, if you had an external IR illuminator, would probably give much better resolution for capturing things going through the scene. There you go. Random piece of kit. Thought I'd throw it on the show. And it's, well, I don't know. Maybe it's expensive. Okay. The rest of these are going to go up as the espresso shot tweets of the day. This one was cool. Really quick. There's from the Tanzu team, they released a Kubernetes plugin allowing you to do kubectl build to pipe that into a build kit environment and build your container images, looking to reduce the complexity and the context switching with what they call the developer inner loop, where you like build, test, build, test, build, test, build, test, and so on. Let's jump out to the next section, which is the tool of the day. Today's tool of the day is neither a tool nor is it recent, but it showed up and I was like, wow, this is actually a real problem. Not only that, but it has 1,337 words, which makes it leet. There you go. This is a problem. People will build a Kubernetes cluster and they will forget to add a server name that they might access it by, or maybe they put a load balancer in front of it down the road and they get the dreaded certificate error where it's like, whatever you're trying to talk to, it's not one of the names in the certificate, so you can go right to hell. And a lot of people, that they just shut down. Like, what do you do? Because TLS certificates, they're a pain in the butt to manage. It's actually not that hard to manage. And this article solves that issue. So while it's not exactly a tool of the day is a thing that's designed to solve a problem and make your life easier. And I felt that this was appropriate. It specifically talks about, well, how to, demonstrating the problem and then how to fix it by generating a new certificate, and then how to verify that that works, how to get Kubernetes to start using it, updating the config map, and so on. It's not actually that difficult of a problem to solve, surprisingly enough. No, it's not fake news. But I challenge one of you who uses RKE, to figure out and write how to make this work with RKE, because the instructions here are, oh yeah, just go in and deal with Etsy Kubernetes, or move the certificate out of Etsy Kubernetes. But that doesn't work when you're using RKE, which runs everything inside of Docker containers. There is a solution. Figure it out and let me know if you wish. That would be a great article to post in the community site, and probably also to get up on Rancher's blog. So there you are, ladies and gentlemen, adding a name to the Kubernetes API server certificate from Scott's weblog. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Sorry that there was no voting. Voting will be back tomorrow. Bleh. Voting will be back tomorrow. Links to everything that I talk about on the show go up in the free community site at community.cncn.io after the show ends. Come join us. Community members get early access to the video replay and other exclusive content. It's free to join. People are joining it every day. If you have something you'd like me to consider for the show, post it in the community site, mention me in the post, or ping me on Discord or Twitter. You can try pinging me on LinkedIn. I'm, for some reason, terrible at getting messages on LinkedIn because every time I log into LinkedIn, I look at my watch and it's like 5 hours later and I'm just still talking to people. So I don't go there very much. Yeah, that's it. Have a great day, everyone. Keep learning. I will see you with voting in the next show. Stay caffeinative.